with the City of Atlanta trying to get open records in open meetings, and was not able to get what I wanted through voluntary compliance or by asking them nicely or appealing to right and wrong. And so sometimes you do have to use the legal system to get open government. Can I just kind of get like a show of hands? How many of you have had any kind of open meeting issues with any agencies that you've been dealing with? A couple? Okay. Cool, cool. And I know you in New Jersey, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And statewide issues or local?
Oh, yes, statewide issues as well as local issues.
Okay. And you, sir?
I'm from DC, and I can't say that I've ever been shut out of a meeting or something, but there's an issue in DC with, I'll say, not publishing the minutes and agendas of meetings, which is, the publishing of minutes and agendas is mandated by law, but nobody
Right.
does it.
Okay. Okay.
So that's the issue.
Yeah, that is an issue. Yeah, they need to do that. And unfortunately, you might have to bring a legal action to make that happen. So my main area of expertise is with Georgia's open meeting law. So I can't speak to DC's, local or what the different states have, nor really the FOIA, which deals with federal records and federal agencies and things like that. But what I'm hoping, a lot of this stuff is, would certainly apply across states. And what I want to do is to develop a website that would start in Georgia, but ultimately, that would be kind of the pilot project, and expand to other states, possibly all 50 states in DC, and then one for FOIA. So what I wanted to start talking about was why would we do something like this? And as I talked about earlier, it's difficult to find lawyers who are willing to take on pro se cases. Or I should say, that shouldn't even say pro se. It should say open government cases. Right. But since those end up being pro se cases, usually I guess it's not the same. Difficulty in finding lawyers willing to take on open government cases. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Now, lawyers, at least in the state of Georgia, can get attorney's fees if they win. I know we talked about New Jersey, that's not the case.
No, well, with our OPRA, our Records Act, we can recover.
With records,
with the meetings
but not
act,
meetings.
you can't recover. There's no
So-
provision to recover attorney's fees.
So there's a little variation state by state with that, but even best case scenario in the state of Georgia, an attorney can get attorney's fees for winning a case, but they have to be willing to delay gratification. It could be a 3-year case, and, so they kind of have to plan, okay, I'm going to win, and maybe in 3 years I'll be able to bill for 1,000 hours. That can be a lot of money, and I know people who do make, attorneys who do make a lot of money from governments that lose in cases. But, A, you have to be willing to delay gratification. B, you have to be, as an attorney, you have to have kind of some principles and some guts and also some compassion. And so that, all of those things together sometimes is a little bit too much to ask when you're looking for an attorney and you're not paying them up front. So, and our justice system, I mean, there's no law that says you have to be an attorney to get justice from our justice system. How many of you have heard about the access to justice movement, or the term access to justice? Okay, one. Access to justice simply means it's the idea that everyone should be able to get access to justice. And unfortunately, in the area of open government, there really isn't a lot of resources. I know in Fulton County, there's like a family law clinic. So if you're having a problem with custody issues and stuff like that, there are people who will be willing to guide you through that. But there really isn't a lot of resources for people who want to bring open government cases. And who's going to care about those cases? It's going to be citizens. It's going to be citizens who are angry, because they want the minutes. They want to see the agenda. They want, to know what the vote was. They want, you know, whatever it is, they want the records. So it's going to be a citizen usually, and then the question is, you know, how do you get what you want? And unfortunately, you know, people are in a conundrum because they don't know, well, I can't get an attorney, I don't know how to do this myself. So the idea for this website would be to empower people with various tools to teach them how to do this themselves, if that's what they choose to do. So, and you know, one thing that I found is no attorney is going to care about your case as much as you do, either. So that's another reason. Obviously, I talked about access to justice, and again, city attorneys, you know, they don't like the idea that some person, some citizen who didn't spend 3 or 4 years in law school is going to tell us what to do. How dare they? How dare a citizen, you know, think that they can, you know, can come in here and tell us how to run our meetings, you know? And that's the attitude that a lot of these elected officials have. In reality, elected officials work for us, but they forget that. And what I've been finding, I mean, I'll tell you just about a couple examples of things that made me think about doing this website. One is, and I only talked about the one lawsuit. I actually had 2 lawsuits that I filed. One that didn't pan out so well. It's currently, I'm going to be refiling it shortly. And what happened was, I didn't perfect service properly. Okay? And when you sue an official, you can sue them in their official capacity and you can sue them in their individual capacity. In their official capacity, you're basically saying, you as an elected official didn't do what you were supposed to do. Sometimes you can also get, depending on your state law, you can get fines that the individual has to pay. And sometimes the standard for that is a little bit different, but the remedies are, you know, sometimes, you know, remedies that affect people in their official capacities. There's also remedies. Anyway, then you have to perfect service twice. And I found out I was perfecting service on the council members in their official capacity by serving the law department. And it turned out that if I wanted to serve them in their individual capacity too, I needed to like send a letter to their office that would not go to the law department. How would I know something like that, you know? And I feel like I have done a lot of research, I've done a lot of due diligence, but that was kind of a procedural technicality that ended up messing me up. What I did was I did something called dismissing the case without prejudice, which just allows you to refile and start over within 6 months. So that's kind of where I am with that. But as I said in my talk this morning, this is a high stakes game, you know, because you're arguing the merits of you have to provide these records, you have to have this meeting be open, you have to, you know, and then you end up losing because you didn't perfect service properly. And so, you know, the citizens of your state or county or city are going, okay, well, John Doe obviously didn't have a case. John Doe was wrong, you know, but in reality, the merits were never heard, you know. So, so I thought about that. I thought about some of the lessons that I learned by making mistakes, and then, okay, finding out the right way to do it, and saying, well, why should everyone have to learn by trial and error? You know, why can't we work together as a community, and you know, and share some of these lessons, and then also be able to help each other. So the 2 main ideas that I had, and so this is, I'm going to say what my ideas are and then kind of open it up, because this is the point of the workshop, is to get your ideas. And one would be kind of like informational modules. And so I have examples here. Okay, what does the Georgia Open Meetings Act require? What does the Georgia Open Records Act require? What are common violations? How can you try to seek voluntary compliance from an agency or through the Attorney General's office? Naming parties, and I put here official versus individual capacities, so someone can understand that before they file. How to perfect service, so I put here tip. Official capacity goes to the agency attorneys, individual capacity goes through the mail. What are the parts of a complaint? What are causes of action? I put a tip here, more is better. And I think like most of us, think that when you're telling a story, when you're making a case, when you're making a claim, you want to just have like one central argument. This is what they did. And when I got the ruling back from the first judge, he said, well, I don't agree with you about this, thing that they have to list the names. But they actually also didn't say that there was a vote either. And if you had listed that as a claim, we might be able to do something with that, but that was never listed as a claim. And what I said, the vote details were never listed, And so he said, well, you were talking about the names, you weren't talking about this other thing. So, that's just something that I learned. Like, okay, next time I file a lawsuit, I'm going to break it up into all these different claims. They did this wrong, they did that wrong, they did that wrong, And so even if one gets thrown out, you've got others that can move forward. So that's another example of what people who are doing this can, give each other tips and stuff like that. What are your claims? Discovery, different types of motions, motion to dismiss, motion for summary judgment, appeals, notices of appeal, petitions, motions for reconsideration, dismissals with or without prejudice, continuances, research tools, the intent of the law, as well as case law. Then the second component was an idea for a discussion board component, where people could post a question and other people could answer the question. Hey, I'm having this problem in my school board. What do you think about this? And so I thought, and people could keep each other informed about the status of their struggles. So those are the things that I thought about. Let me now talk about some concerns that I had in my mind, and you guys might have some others. But the first concern that I had was more of a legalistic thing, which is, I don't know if you've ever if you've ever talked to like an attorney friend and said, hey, what do you think about this? And they go, well, I cannot give you legal advice, but, this is not to be construed as legal advice. However, and that's because they don't want you coming back and saying, well, so-and-so told me that this is what I should do. So I just kind of want to make sure that we would have some kind of disclaimer that everyone would be comfortable with, especially when I talk about the stakeholders to involve. I put here, well, wouldn't it be great if attorneys could be involved, or judges, or clerks, or, and they might say, I'm not comfortable saying what people should do or shouldn't do, because that's giving legal advice. So how to deal with that question. Then who would be the stakeholders to involve in Georgia, but also just generally in the other states that this could happen? Who would be the stakeholders to involve? I was thinking about privacy options as well, and what whether everything should just be out there, or whether maybe there would be different settings, for the discussion board, and somebody could say, well, hey, this is my problem. I don't really want, because, what if your school board is reading this, What if your opponent is reading our website and they're seeing what we're getting ready to do? So that was something I thought about. And then just web design issues. I'm not really a techie person. I do run the Atlanta Progressive News. I spent $500 on content management software that I just, you know, so it's actually called Interspire, and it's just basic content management software. And so just wondering, you know, what ideas people might have for web design strategies. So I don't know if there's any techies in the room. But, okay, so I guess I wanted to open it up at this point and get your all's ideas, kind of a brainstorm, and what your thoughts would be to address the components of the website or how to deal with any of the concerns that I raised. How could we make something like this helpful to you or to your community? Yeah.
I think one of the most helpful things that you could do would be to have a library section of the site. And I would say it should include not only the rules of civil procedure for your jurisdiction, but also you know, direct links to the statutes that are relevant. And there's kind of an issue in America generally, and this is an access to justice issue.
Right.
That case law, relevant case law, is, I mean, you gotta pay like Westlaw or LexisNexis for relevant case law all the time. But the thing is that the actual, while things like their head notes or their commentary on cases, while that's their proprietary content, the text of judicial decisions is public information.
Right.
So if you can get like a clean copy of important cases for people to read relative to open government, and you can put that on your website and library too, that could be immensely helpful for a lot of people. And you can find, I imagine, I know this is the case with FOIA laws, but also I think that they have a section on open meeting laws too. Is the Reporters Committee for the Freedom of the Press? Right. They have you can buy like their kind of treaties for every state. You can buy it on a CD, but they also put it online.
I'm sorry, they're what?
The Reporters Committee for the Freedom of the Press is like rcfp.org.
Right.
And they have like a kind of for every state they have like an open government practice guide, which has citations to important cases. So you could go there. And you can find the cases that are important, and then somehow find those cases from a law library and build a, so you can actually get the full text of important cases for what you're looking for. Okay. Let me make sure that I have that organization right.
Yeah, RCFP.
Yeah. Yeah. RCFP.org.
RCFP.
They have like a. They have some resources online that are really helpful for people that are interested in pro se, and actually for attorneys too.
Yeah.
Open government.
Okay. And I mean, you know, what kind of things would you be, anybody, you know, what kind of things would you be looking for in a website like this? Yeah.
I think I represented myself pro se once
Really?
for a traffic ticket.
Okay.
I was innocent, so I decided it would just be fun to try it. And I mean, it's for a municipal court, and I was in college, and you know, thought this is going to be awesome. But like one of the things that really helped me out was I had a little bit of a background in just from mock trial in high school about kind of court etiquette, how the procedure works. And I think a lot of people don't though, which is a huge kind of emotional burden because they don't know how to conduct themselves when they get up in front of a judge. And you know, that's just kind of universal etiquette. It's not particular to any sort of venue. So I think something like that could be really helpful for people.
Like what would be an example? Like Your Honor?
Yeah, how to address the judge. I mean, even down to basic procedure of the defense or the prosecution. When do they go? Get into jury selection. Just basic processes that they might run into and represent themselves pro se.
Okay.
Along those lines, it sounds. I'm a third-year law student, and it sounds. It's what?
I said okay.
It sounds funny, but like some very basic things about where to find, like, where is the courthouse? Where is the room in the courthouse?
No, that's good. That's good.
So,
yeah, where is the
everybody
clerk's
has,
office?
Everybody has to learn that, and it could be helpful for people to not have to learn it firsthand by trial and error. Like if you can put on your website just where is the courthouse? Where is the civil division?
Right.
Where is the civil
Correct,
division?
right.
Where is the clerk's office where you actually filed a complaint?
Right.
That could be helpful too. There's a very, I mean, it sounds, there's some very basic things that you don't think of.
That's really great. Okay, I want to get some people who have their hand up. Yeah, you?
Now, going back to court etiquette, how did you learn how to conduct yourself during oral arguments? And I think that would be a great way. How did you learn?
Well, one question I had was about, you're supposed to call a judge your honor. And I was like, well, if there's multiple judges, are they your honors? Or do they each have their own honor, or do they have one honor that they share? So I was like, is it like your all's honor, or is it your honors? And I was enlightened that it's your honors, so that I went with that one. Although I think your all's honor would have been kind of cool.
It would have flown in Georgia.
Did you have to start with "May it please the court" or anything like that?
I didn't. Nobody told me about "May it please the court,"
Okay.
and the other side kept busting out with "May it please the court." But I guess they let me get away without pleasing the court.
But that falls under just the basic court etiquette.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, then maybe on, this sort of basic etiquette, maybe some videos that show the opening,
Oh, that's a great idea.
Along with may it please the court, is court's indulgence is what you say when you've completely become very flustered and lost your train of thought. And
Oh,
you look
okay.
something up and look in your notes. You say court's indulgence, and then they just kind of like, wait. That's what you say, like, excuse me while I collect my thoughts.
Oh, okay. Okay. So this would be examples of addressing the court. Okay.
or just sort of maybe some key moments, but definitely addressing the court, as you say, people aren't used to it.
So you're saying when you went and did oral arguments, you just winged it?
No. I mean, but I didn't really. I mean, it's not like I got that much advice, really. I mean, because here's the thing. Well, I didn't even. The only time that I went before a judge was oral arguments.
Yes.
So the first two times I lost, everything was in writing. I didn't even get before a judge until it was the Supreme Court. So that was already kind of nerve-wracking. And then it's like you get 20 minutes to do your side. The other side gets 20 minutes. But you don't know when they're going to interrupt you to ask questions. And you also don't know what the other side is going to say, so you don't know how much time you're going to need to rebut. So what I ended up doing was I made like these modules of like, these are the pieces that I think are important. And then I like ranked them. I was like, well, I definitely want to get to this. This is a 5. And this one is like a 3. So I made sure to get to all my 5s. But then I broke them up so that I could, if I had to use something to respond to something else, I could, but then I could kind of check it off and come back to it. So when I asked the Georgia First Amendment Foundation attorney like that, she was like, no, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. So, but that's, well, one time I went before, on my other case, the one where I didn't do the service properly, and I had like a stack of papers like this, and it ended up, everything got so jumbled that I should have said, what?
Court's indulgence.
Yes, can I please have the court's indulgence while I sort through my papers now? Because the stack made sense because everything was in order, but then it was like, I found something and then it went here, and then it was just a mess. So yeah, so I'm glad you guys are bringing up things like that because I guess there's a lot, but I also don't want this to turn into like the equivalent of a 4-year law degree either, because then we would need to start charging it.
I think you should check out Pine Tree Legal of Maine.
Like
They
Pine
have-
Tree Legal?
Yes.
Is that a website?
It's a legal aid corporation in Maine.
Okay. Oh, in Maine.
Yeah, they have a actually nationally renowned website for assisting people who are doing pro se litigation.
Okay.
They do mostly like low income things, so it's a lot of helping people keep their home. How do you represent yourself to keep your home in foreclosure on that sort of thing. But a lot of what the information that they're providing would be useful for sort of paralleling with your social impact litigation.
Right, right.
So I take a look at that one.
Yeah, no, definitely. To the extent that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, you know, definitely.
Yeah, and they have, I think, they have probably 50 or 60 lawyers in the organization.
Oh.
All those lawyers are expected to contribute articles. So it's a fairly large undertaking that you're talking about doing.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're capable of doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, we could start out with, you know, with some and then add. You know, it doesn't have to start with everything, you know, and people will probably, we could never exhaust everything that would need to go on the site, so people would kind of ask for things as they were going along. I know you had raised your hand.
Yeah, I just had a few things. I was thinking if you start with criminal law first, because I feel a lot of people, especially the general public, they're not usually out trying to get the government to give up stuff. They're just trying to defend themselves, and they always have to pay a lot of money. I just feel if you were to build like a really strong information service for like general laws that people break, they would grow really big real quick, and that could be a tipping point. But on another point, if you could outline the workflow of the laws behind the offense, so you'd be like, this law leads to this one, which led to this one, and this is the law you're guilty of breaking, but it's like these laws led up to that law, and that's why that law is legal. That's why it's being enforced. And then you can have the legal precedents of each of those laws. And I mean, obviously there's precedents on both sides, but you just have a database of that, and you could just like go through the workflow of all the laws and see how they're all related.
What do you mean when you like this law led to that law?
Like the Commerce Clause is the basis for a lot of other laws.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's like, is the Commerce Clause the real reason why you're being charged with something, or is it because you have possession of something that
Okay.
you're being charged? The real fact is it's the Commerce Clause, and if we want to change the laws, we have to really see where like
So
the
what did you
weakest
call
points
that? You
are.
called it like the workflow of laws?
Yeah, the workflow of laws behind an offense or litigation. I don't know I only know like the criminal word, but
Yeah, and I'm afraid
with
that
precedents.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's a great idea that probably would attract a lot of attention, but I think the idea is to really focus on open government litigation.
Yeah, well, open government, but in the end, you want to have a database of everything in a wiki style where there's no repeating data and it's all interlinked.
Right.
So,
But like, for example, I know that our entire open meetings and open records law is like grounded in, you know, the Georgia Constitution. You know, that was one of the things. So, there's that kind of thing.
be the local versus federal state. You have
Right.
to separate the workflows, but
Right. No, the Georgia Constitution says that, that elected officials are the servants and trustees of the people and are at all times amenable to them. And so when I got up before the court, I was like, well, it says at all times, not just sometimes.
yeah.
You know, all times.
Yeah. If they argue against it, you have to ask them what law they're using, and if you had the workflow, you'd be able to tear down their argument because you'd have already been looking at all the possible arguments they would present.
Okay, that's a great idea. Okay, in the back?
Yeah, so, I mean, as you discovered, obviously the little tricks in the process and things like that, obviously document those, but also as you're serving these documents, you could have kind of a type of form builder on the site where you can say like, oh, did they do X? Yes. Okay, did they do Y? No, but I'm not going to check that one. And out comes, these are the papers you need to serve them with. Like fill in their name here, fill in their title, and
Wow.
you can generate that document that they're going to need to be served with.
Okay.
LegalZoom, I think, is a company that does that in more civil cases. I don't know if they have any open meeting stuff.
It's just open source LegalZoom.
The complaint that people thought had to file when they want to take the filter in New Jersey Superior Court.
Exactly.
It's teaching people how to complete the complaint that has to be filed. I don't know how Georgia works. I know in Jersey there's a $200 fee for if you file a complaint with robbery hit complaint in Superior Court. So I don't know what goes on when did you have to pay, did you have a complaint when you had to complete?
Yeah. Now I didn't pay because I provided the court with an affidavit that said that I could not afford to pay the fee.
Right.
So that was how that worked.
Right.
But
You still have to file a complaint. I mean,
you still have to file the initial complaint.
Initial complaint.
And so, yeah, you know,
People need to
so
do
in the
that.
court, in the Superior Court of blank county. And so that would be, you know, fill in Fulton, fill in DeKalb, fill in your county, you know, fill in your name, your address, the defendant's name. So I think that's a great idea. I don't know how the technology of it, but
It's fairly straightforward, and you can do that for every document that you need in the process.
okay. Well, what do you mean fairly straightforward? Is it?
If you've got a CMS, you could probably figure out how to make it in your CMS.
Yeah, it'd be like something related to the workflow of the laws, and that would provide you the steps.
CMS. Okay. I'll find out what that is.
It's a content management system.
Oh, yeah, content management.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
we could go into that.
Yeah, okay.
So one issue that you could have with that, going back to your disclaimer, is that you'll need to, before you start working on this website, you'll have to look at your state laws as to practicing law without a license. And not only will you have to look at the state laws, you'll have to look at the case law. As, what was your name?
Alex.
As Alex was discussing, a lot of that law will be fleshed out by the case law as to what exactly is practicing law without a license. And if you cross that line into practicing law without a license, then you could actually be, in some states, criminally liable. And lawyers are very protective of their turf. And so if you actually become successful, a lot of these guys like Nolo and Zoom Law, they're not allowed to practice in certain states because even just filling out an automatic form in some states is, like, even just having a person say,
Wow.
what's your name, what are you
I mean, to
trying
start off
accomplish?"
with, I mean, you could at
That's
least provide.
That's considered actually.
The way that Rocket
practicing
Lawyer
law.
gets around it is that they actually have 50 lawyers. They have lawyers from every state. But it's true, there's some states where just filling out forms is unauthorized practice of law. And unauthorized practice of law can be it's a bigger deal in some states than in others. Like in some states, it's actually a criminal offense. Like it applies to others, like everybody can
Wow.
get in trouble.
Okay.
But in some states, it's just something that applies to lawyers. So if I'm licensed in Nebraska and I'm not licensed in Iowa, and I'm just using those, I don't know anything about
Right.
unauthorized practice of law in those states. It might just be that I could be brought up before the state bar in my state, and I could get in trouble because I'm a lawyer in one
Right.
state. I could get in trouble because I'm a lawyer. But if somebody isn't a lawyer anywhere, there's not really any state bar for them to get in.
Well, it's a real conundrum
So-
because it's like, you know.
You have to research it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the conundrum is, I mean, you shouldn't need an attorney to get justice under the legal system.
Well, no,
And
you
so
don't.
now we're talking about, well, how can we help people to do it themselves? And it's like, well, gosh, can you not even do that? And so it's like really, it's really, you know, a monopoly for the
Yes.
for the legal system.
I think it has to do with how you structure the CMS and where the data is stored. I
Okay.
mean, you could make it so that there isn't really anybody heading it up, and it's just all crowdsourced, and there's no official like source. It's just through like a certain number of people vetting it, like Dig or Reddit, they would become the official thing.
Yeah, we worry, as a person paying the bills, you're gonna be.
Yeah.
more-
Yeah,
So we need somebody in some other country.
I mean, to get away around, to go around that, I mean, at the very least, you can just provide examples of complaints, and especially those related to OpenGov issues. I mean, I've found just examples that you can base, you know, your own off of to be incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I think your library is an excellent place to start. As
Yeah,
far as-
Yeah, you know, Matthew, I'm with New Jersey Foundation for Open Government, and one of the projects that we're starting, we're beginning, is a project to gather all of the cases, published, unpublished, and then there's a third category of cases, and create a compendium that we're going to be able to put on our website with an analysis of each case, at least where those analyses have been done. And in New Jersey, and I can't speak for any other state, in order to even begin to uncover all the cases, this is for people who don't go to a law library or don't have access to Westlaw, because it's even improper for an attorney